Hey everybody, welcome to another Sunday Share. Welcome to our podcast produced by yours truly, Raleigh. Alright, so today's video is like a follow up. Last video was a bit long, 30 minutes. I tried to make it like 20-25 minutes tops. So I cut it short, and so this might be a little bit shorter, how should I say? Yeah, not that lengthy like the last one, right? Today, continuing, we're looking at it's all driven by data, teachers' performance, and the whole idea of whether or not teacher is effective within the classroom. So there are some school administrators that, upon looking at the data, so to speak, meaning the students' grades, test grades, exam grades, whatever, they determine whether or not a teacher is effective. Some school administrator might or might not visit a class on a good day for the teacher. Thus, the actual assessment of the teacher's performance, whilst it might look as if it's driven by anecdotal, supervisional experience, is not necessarily so. A student might perform bad in an exam for several reasons, and this bad performance might carry throughout the entire uh, academic years, while some students might pick up after the issue have been identified by the facilitator. In this case, is a teacher, or others might not. Issues such as abuse, crime and violence in the community, harassment, bully, experiencing issues, that warrants a more psychosocial support. For example, death in the family, loss of the breadwinner of the home, issues within the family that is too delicate to really share with any and everyone. Now, some teachers have taken it upon themselves to be a counselor, a guide for students. Whilst facilitating teaching and learning is the primary goal and objective of teachers within the classroom, what you find is that it is really indicative on the teacher to actually facilitate the total well-being of the individual, whom in this case is a student. So if a student is not behaving well, for example, a student is always angry, a student is always sleeping, a student is always, considered absent from class but present at school, there warrant an investigation. This warrant an investigation into why the student is how it is. A few years ago, a teacher realized that a student was always sleeping in class. By the way, this is not me, right? But a student is always sleeping in class, right? Every class, the student will be sleeping in the mornings. So one day, the student asked to be excused for a little bit, but did not return for the rest of the class. Okay, the primary objective is to ensure that the content is shared, students participate, students do exam, and the numbers is good as far as the results. Also, I'm coming back to the story, but there is a traditional high school in Jamaica, and that is above half a tree, right? That if the students get below the pass mark, the teacher is obligated to actually find the student and have the student resit the test as much as possible, so as to ensure that the numbers are driven upward. This is what we call data driven, right, guys? And when we talk, it's as if some persons are, considering what I'm saying as gibberish, nothing no so, right? Coming back to the story regarding the student in the class now. So the student is in the class, always sleeping, sometimes asked to go outside and never return, right? So one day the teacher was actually, with his friends, going, out of town. So they stopped at a club. And when they stop at a club, one of those club, yeah, teachers go all over. 'Cause teachers are humans, right? They stop at one of those clubs in which they drink and enjoy themselves, and you have some ladies actually dancing on a pole and say, hey, you give them some tip, right? It was a weekend. It was out of town, and the teacher just wanted to relax. So the teacher went to a little club out of town. The teacher actually sat in the middle and actually watched the young ladies actually dancing on stage, what you call a strip club, right? And one of the person on stage looked familiar, but the teacher could not pinpoint where he actually, you know, where actually know the particular individual from. And then the particular individual start to walk down the aisles within the club, taunting the men, mostly men within the space, dancing and jigging so that the men will actually give monies. Lo and behold, when the eyes of the individual met the eyes of the teacher realized that the the individual was the same student that was in class always sleeping. Lo and behold, cut a long story short, the student was a go-go dancer, and this is what she did during weekends and sometime in the week, uh, so as to earn monies for her family. Her mother is not supportive, meaning that it's not really there, and her father, how it goes in certain spaces within Jamaica. The father just there for a short period of time and then cut out. Now, somebody might question and say, hey, why is it that the teacher is in this space? And I would answer, I would probably ask the same thing, right? But remember that teacher is always human. Teacher, English language, guys. Sorry about that. I'm not editing. English language is also human, right? So therefore, some things you you will always find teachers doing that to you might not be, that of a prime example as to how students in which are placed in their care should behave. I remember when I was in high school. When I was in high school, I usually see my teacher actually smoke and drink, especially after school, right? They would like lock up in the office and they would actually smoke and drink, right? And it was cool seeing them in their cars coming to school. They would out the cigarette before they actually reach the gate, and they would actually come into school. And trust me, it's not always cigarette, right? But teachers have different ways of releasing them stress, right? So there are different issues there. But to cut a long story short, the anecdotals, or should I say anecdotals, of a teacher experience with student within the classroom is not considered so as to determine whether or not a teacher is effective. It's purely data driven. So if a teacher wishes to be promoted or to be acclaimed as one of the best teachers, he or she just primarily needs to ensure that the students pass the test. It doesn't matter how, but they should pass. So, regardless of how the student's psychosocial situation may exist, the thrust is to get the students to pass the test. So, a student might pass a test, because a teacher might actually give them the test before. And this is something that I know have actually happened throughout the years in education. Trust me, I've been in the system for 26 years. Teachers give the students a test, especially at traditional high school. Give the students a test and say, study the paper, you'll be getting a test on this next class. And whoa, same test returns, and students get a high grade, and that's placed on the system. And the students are regarded as being intelligent, and teacher is regarded as being effective teacher within the classroom, because the data actually demonstrate that some amount of effective teaching has occurred, so as to warrant grades that have been awarded to students. Wow, that is bullshit, right? The total education facilitation process should include or should embrace both anecdotal as well as data driven experience of the teacher. Now there's this new thing, there's this new thrust in the by the Ministry of Education that teachers should actually write a reflection periodically, whether 2 months, per week, per whatever. You strategize as to how you write a reflection, right? In which the teacher actually share his or her feeling regarding a particular lesson. How they feel about the class, the progress and all that. Probably share some anecdotals. But are these reflections actually considered to determine whether or not a teacher is effective within the classroom? I beg to suggest no. There is this list that normally comes out in the earlier part of an academic year. Well, should I say in the earlier part of a calendar year, where it actually pinpoints schools that are ranked as top schools and schools that are regarded as schools that are not really doing so well. The primary focus of this list is exam passes. In a meeting recently, it was shared that when talk about data, when talk about teachers' performance, whether or not a teacher is effective, the primary thrust is whether or not value have been added to the teacher teaching the lesson. Value have been added to students within the classroom, even by 1%. So if value have been added, that means the teacher have been effective within the classroom. I when I say value have been added, meaning that, for example, diagnostic tests, students will get 10%. 6 weeks test, students will get 12%. End of year test or exam, whatever you call it, students will get 20%. The value added would be roughly, probably about 8 or something like that, because each time the grades practically increase, right? However, student getting these grades, can they actually become employable outside the classroom? Whenever can they be considered employable whenever they actually leave that particular educational institution? I beg to suggest no. No, because when you look at it, you need subjects. Yeah, you need subjects to matriculate to a university. You need subjects to actually get him. Right? You need subjects. Passes in subjects, right? To be able to be considered to go out on your own, to start your own business, as most investors will like to see your credentials so as to whether or not to decide whether or not they're going to make investment within the program in which you are actually proposing. The position that individuals have achieved some amount of value added based on teaching, learning, facilitation, whether or not it's minute or large, yet falling below the threshold that is needed so as to be accredited as a successful graduate, or should I say certified individual within a specific area, is practically bullshit, right? This is an excuse being used by those persons professed to be supervisors, managers, or better yet, have attained their PhD from the universities throughout the Caribbean, or better yet, online, right? I can assure you that if you were attending a university and that your grade when started out was minute, in comparison to those persons in similar situation like you. For example, if you got 20% for your first test, 30% for your second test, and 39% for your last test, meaning exams, right? You're still considered a failure. Now, whether or not you like it, you will not be awarded a PhD because you have attained that value added. Why not put that same thrust, that same energy, that same ideology in secondary high schools? Will this bullshit bo value added, right? We must make a change in the individual life in which in whom we are charged with managing. So therefore, if a child started a high school with a 15% in maths, what are you saying? That if the child leaves having attained 25% in maths, you have actually achieved something because you have actually added 10% for value added? That is total utter rubbish. That child still cannot perform to the optimal requirement that is needed out there in society so as to actually make a life. Where can you go with that 25% so as to continue your education? This is just a facade in creating an image, shall I say. It's a facade in creating an image of that something is being done and some level of success is being achieved with the limited resources that are there. Should the teacher not achieve, right? Is it the teacher uh, to be held? Is it the teacher that should be held responsible for the students' non-achievement? And the social psychological situation of the individual student considered whether or not the success is there. For example, as I said before, students dancing at the nightclub, couldn't that be a factor that is considered as the reason why the data, meaning the results, end of year results for that child is low and continues to be low, and until someone actually take the matter into hand, whether through counseling or some action being taken from the level of the school or the teacher, change is actually unearthed. No, a lot of teachers have actually taken it upon themselves to select a few and to assist in areas in which they can, but they can't because coming back to the compensation issue, although it by law, as instructed by Ministry of Education, money should not be given to students, nor should they be offered ride, nor gifts or whatever, versus if it's that of the opposite sex, right? However, some students are in dire need, and the resources that are actually given are allowed at the school, whether the PAT program or those welfare programs that are actually there, is so limited that it's only the extreme cases actually get some amount of relief, and the relief that they get is practically limited. It's just for them to like go on for that day, but not like to see themselves climbing out of the situation and improving their both their psychosocial as well as their educational situation. It's a very difficult balance that we have to make as educators, right? And with all that, we have an albatross around our neck with persons from the ministry perspective. Well, having a ministry perspective that we need to know, right? Lesson planning in 5E, and then now we come with the 3C, and then now the new appraisal, and then now we are expected to ensure that the data speaks well of our experience in the classroom. Because once the data is out, that means that you are out. Once the data doesn't ring some level of value added, not considering anecdotal, you know, experiences. Uh, it's just that teachers are just offered baskets to carry water, right? And it just boggles my mind as to why did I come into this profession? Why didn't I stay in banking, right? But, and the fun thing about it, a lot of persons at the ministry, they spend just a few years in education and then now actually move up to a higher echelon of administration, and they themselves left education because they couldn't manage, yet still they are saying they are further instructing us as facilitators to stay the course and to add different paradigms to our teaching apparatus so as to ensure practical, I call it now, effective classroom instruction, um, you know, pedagogy and sharing of information. This is just a weird situation, guys. And I don't think I have long left into this Jamaican education system. It's just hypocrisy. Hypocrisy to its greatest level. Catch you next time. Bye bye.